So, what does it mean to be a woman? I mean, really, is it just about biology? Is it some kind of destiny? Or is it something else entirely? Well, back in the middle of the 20th century, the philosopher Simone de Beauvoir asked that exact same question. And our answer, well, it kick-started a revolution in how we think about everything: identity, freedom, and gender itself.
Here it is. This is the sentence that lit the match, published way back in 1949. One is not born, but rather becomes a woman. Now just let that sink in for a second. It's a total challenge to this idea we've had for centuries that our biology dictates our destiny. For Beauvoir, this wasn't just some clever phrase. It was the start of a huge philosophical puzzle.
So what on earth did she actually mean by that? I mean, if you aren't born a woman, how in the world do you become one? To get to the bottom of that, we've got to take a step back and look at the philosophical world she was working in.
To really understand Beauvoir's radical answer, we first need to open up her philosophical toolkit. And the main tool she was using, the one that was taking post-war France by storm, was this really powerful idea called existentialism.
Okay, so the core of existentialism boils down to this one big idea. Existence precedes essence. What that means is, unlike, say, a hammer that's designed with a purpose before it's even made, humans are the total opposite. We just exist first. We're thrown into the world, and only then, through the choices we make and the things we do we create our own purpose, our own essence. We show up as a blank canvas, not an actor who's been handed a script.
And this leads to a pretty wild conclusion. We are completely, utterly free. There's no grand plan, no biological blueprint telling you who you're supposed to be. Nope. We are just here, and we're faced with this massive, kind of terrifying responsibility of making up our own meaning from scratch. The existentialists even had a name for it. They said we are condemned to be free.
Now, to get a little more specific, Beauvoir's famous partner, Jean-Paul Sartre, used these two key terms. On the one hand, you've got being in itself. Think of a rock or a table. It's just an inert object. It is what it is. But then you have being for itself, and that's us. That's the conscious human always choosing, creating, and defining who we are. Now remember this split, because for Beauvoir, the huge problem was that society was trying to push half of all people into that first category, to treat them like objects.
But here's the thing. Even though Beauvoir was a full-on existentialist, she saw a massive blind spot in this whole philosophy. This big, grand theory about total human freedom had a huge flaw when you actually applied it to the real world.
She basically argued that whenever these existentialist thinkers were talking about the universal human who gets to create his own essence, they were, without even realizing it, talking about men. They had completely overlooked all the powerful social forces that were holding back the freedom of half the population: women.
See, Beauvoir realized that society is built around this fundamental binary, this split. Men is set up as the subject. He's the default, the absolute, the one who gets to define himself by going out into the world and doing things. Woman, on the other hand, gets cast as the other. She's seen as the inessential object, and she's defined not by who she is for herself, but always in relation to man, as someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's daughter.
And this brings us right back to that famous sentence. Once you have all these pieces, we can finally understand how one is not born, but rather becomes a woman.
Beauvoir pretty much laid out the whole process, step by step. First, you start with the simple biological fact of being born female, but right away, society jumps in. It starts pushing all these myths and ideals of the eternal feminine. Then, through education and culture, girls are trained for a life of domesticity, of serving others. And over time, that pressure leads to internalization. You start to adopt these roles as your own. And the final, critical step? This whole socially built role starts to feel completely natural, like an unchangeable essence.
And this conditioning isn't some accident, it's a whole system. Beauvoir pointed to the specific tools society uses: myths that paint women as these mysterious creatures, religions that define their duties, school systems that steer them away from big ambitions, and a culture that constantly rewards them for being quiet and agreeable.
And here is the real kicker, the critical consequence of all this. This imposed essence of femininity isn't harmless. It's a cage. It actively stops women from achieving what the existentialists saw as the whole point of being human: transcendence. It denies them the freedom to create their own meaning, to go after their own projects, and to define themselves on their own terms.
So, as you can probably guess, when you drop an idea this powerful into the world, the impact is, well, it's immense. The Second Sex wasn't just a book. It was a philosophical bomb, and we are still feeling its shockwaves today. When it came out in 1949, it gave people the intellectual framework they needed to understand patriarchy. By the 60s and 70s, it had become a must-read, a foundational text for second-wave feminism. It gave activists the tools to go beyond just asking for equal rights and to start questioning the very definition of woman. And today, her ideas are absolutely central to gender studies, sociology, you name it.
And this, right here, is the ultimate takeaway from Beauvoir. Her whole philosophy isn't just a critique of the world, it's a call for liberation. Because if a role is constructed by society, that means we have the power to take it apart. We can deconstruct it, and then we can build something new in its place. It's a profoundly empowering idea when you think about it.
And that leaves all of us with a final, really important question. Beauvoir used her toolkit to deconstruct gender. But what other roles in our lives, based on our jobs, our backgrounds, our families, what other roles are just scripts that have been written for us by society? And maybe more importantly, how can we pick up the pen and start writing our own?